The title of my paper describes the key findings of my research, namely that there are two groups at universities, and two groups of students at universities who do their social context and as a starting point in our situation, and due invisible barriers couldn't imagine starting their own business. Initially, I would like to briefly discuss the agenda. First, I will start with a short introduction of myself. Then I will explain the research context, followed by the research design. Then I will explain the research findings, the key findings. And at the end, I will discuss my interpretation of the work and show you the limitation of my work. Briefly about me, my name is Heinevetter. I'm a master's student from the University of Kassel in business education. For some time ago, I worked at the department as a student assistant at the Department of Entrepreneurship Education with Brigitte Halfas. There I discovered my interest in this research area. Let's speak about the research context and the motivation, the initial situation. What is the initial situation? We know from EE that universities play an important role in economic growth and social cohesion. We know that EE at universities can influence the mindset of the students in different ways. Through EE, some students decide to start up their own business. And what we know, according to GES, is that only 3.7% of the students are already involved in entrepreneurial activities during their studies. And only 3% of all students aim to start a business after graduation. Courses for this are researched by various disciplines. For example, we know from primary entrepreneurship that an entrepreneurial person report having a role model or entrepreneurial person in their close environment or in their families. Early socialization of entrepreneurial skills and values have a promoting effect. Other studies examine the gender specific aspects have an influence. Within my literature research, I noted that these different approaches of investigation in the context of social inequality of students belong to different categories of inequality. For example, the presence of an entrepreneurial person in the family or in the close environment assigned to the inequality category class. From recent research trends in sociological gender studies, we know that it's advantageous but also disadvantageous to study individual categories separately from each other. Since there are overlaps between and intersections between categories of inequality. If only one category is considered like race or class or gender, groups to which several categories apply are excluded from the analysis. Therefore, I try to keep up my working question open and within the concept of social context. The research question arises from the initial situation and is to what extent is students' unwillingness to start up their own business influenced by this social context? This is the research design. The research design based on three main pillars. The first is as a basic framework, the ground theory according to Strauss and Kubin. Secondly, the reflexive diversity, a research concept from Andrea Bührmann. What is special about this is that the diversity of the students is seen as a positive given moment and seen as an outcome of social practices. And of course, as I already mentioned, to ensure the consideration of all categories of inequality, race, class, body, and gender. And at the end, and the third main pillar is an intersection multi-level analysis from Degel and Winker. This was chosen because it's also oriented towards social practices and not only captures the identity formation of the students, the method also allows references to be made to structural hierarchies. Yeah. The basis for this was 6 narrative interviews with unwilling bachelor students from the University of Kassel at the end of their studies. The axis.
Of course, they were unwilling.
Yeah, this was, The access is made through social media platforms like StudyDry or Facebook, and the first impulse in the narrative interview was tell me your story, who are you? And the second impulse, why is starting a business uninteresting for you? Let's move on to results. Starting with how students construct their own identity. Here I would like to discuss first 3 more in detail.
First, L. L is a world open person. She comes from rural areas. She is a passionate person and her parents separated. G is unwilling to start up her own business, and she's an education climber. She immigrated back from Russian Germany, and she's a caring person and has a fear of relegation. CE is a student. He comes from East Germany, former GDR, and his mother is deceased. His father is a teacher, and he is 32 years old. In the context of the unwillingness of the students, the central themes of the identity construction were grouped. Here, it was not the characteristics of the individuals that were considered, only their position towards starting their own business. It was noticeable that one of the group focused on the negation of their financial security law, while the other group put forward more collectivistic values. Another subdivision then emerged, namely that some of the people who were concerned about their financial security described starting a business as a particularly dramatic and in worst case scenarios, whereas the other group doubt their abilities. So, based on this grouping, key findings about the influencing social context can be concluded, starting with the group focused on financial security. This group is coming from middle and working classes in Germany. Their parents have an excessive financial background to secure them in terms of starting up an own business. Generally, the parents are particularly careful with their money, and they pass this to their children in their upbringing. The subdivision, the group who thinking in worst case scenarios have experience of poverty due migration. For example, G she lived in her childhood in a refugee home, and her parents were absolutely destituted. Yeah. In addition, the families of this group have patriarchal characteristics of gender roles. So they are, one moment. Sorry. In addition, the families of these individuals are very patriarchal and expect their children to fulfill their gender roles. The other subgroup, who doubt their abilities, have also had experience with money shortages. The parents of this group divorced, and the daughters experienced financially hard times for their mothers. In the collectivistic-oriented group, money scarcity did not matter. There was always enough money. In the families, time was prioritized for each other. So, by what core values and norms are students guided in the context of refusing to start one's own business? Surprisingly, the guiding of both groups is the principle of performance. The students in the group focused on financial security group has written classes through performance and have incorporated the performance principle. The required performance regarding starting their own business overwhelmed the students. And in the group collectivistic orientation, the students tend to reject the principle of performance orientation. They want to let B5 even and relax. The students do not want a performance to be the focus of their lives. The results show that the focus on financial security group, in particular, encounters many structural limitations. On the structural level, the students have no background that provides them with financial security. On the state level, they do not find a social security system. Issues such as health, pension, maternity, and parental leave worry the students. A permanent working position is more attractive for them. They lack positive role models. They have no person in their environment who could be a role model for social security. And in addition, the families of origin have certain patriarchal demands on the gender roles of the students about both genders. The students assume that they will not be able to fulfill these required rules as a future caring family father and a future good family mother by founding and by starting up an own business. So the only structural hierarchy for the group collectivistic oriented group is that they have no role models with a healthy work-life balance. So all at a glance, what we know is that we have various structural hierarchies that invisibly constrain students. First, the lack of financial and social security constraints. First, the lack of financial and social security. Secondly, the lack of role models on various topics. And finally, the lack of acceptance due to gender roles and their families. What else emerged from the findings is that we have complexes interactions between race, class, and gender. The governing norm for the groups is a principle of achievement, and we have two different types of unwilling futurepreneurs at universities. What are the recommendations for action? EE sensibilization and EE support for students at universities have to thematize and overcome the structural hierarchies. What is a little bit more important is to send a signal from the state level and to change the societal structural startup framework for students. The central topics should be maternity protection, parental benefits, pension contribution, health insurance, long-term care insurance, unemployment benefits, and support for single parents. What are the limitations of my work? I exclusively considered the student's perspective, not the perspective from the university or organization. And the interview was about the phone at the end of Corona pandemic. And because of this, I can't see any aspects of social inequality, only overspeak. Yeah, now we are at the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will show you the list of my sources. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia, for this really interesting presentation. Any questions?
I really enjoyed the presentation and the thought, why do they not start? That is a very, very old question. Everybody's trying to find an answer to that. I think you found something very interesting when you said that they don't have the right role models, and several aspects I liked. I did not really understand why at the end with your recommendation you did not turn to what I understand as a theory of planned behavior, Eisen, and all those processes, how I can increase perceived desirability, perceived feasibility, all these behavioral aspects that to me would be the logical next step.
Yeah, This was no, das waren keine Hinweise, die ich finden konnte aus den Interviews heraus. Bernd, kannst du das vielleicht übersetzen für mich?
Okay.
Sorry.
Ja.
Also ich habe, war ja grounded und für mich gab es jetzt in dem Sinne keine Hinweise darauf, das aus psychologischer Perspektive zu supporten. Also da irgendwelche Schlüsse herauszuziehen. Dass das auf psychologischer Ebene, also was Sie jetzt beschrieben haben, Sie meinten jetzt psychologisch.
Ja.
Genau. Das würde ich ausschließen. Also das sind also die studieren alle Wirtschaftswissenschaften und sind ja in diesem Bereich sehr gut vernetzt und auch die haben ja auch das Wissen und die Kompetenzen. Ne?
Okay, ja super.
Yes, I think usually if you educate people, you assume that you know more than the people you educate. But of course, if it's if you look at your data, then this is obvious. I really like this point that people who have been heavily precarious situations, they avoid risks. So that they come to Germany, they manage to get on a university, having some social security out of that, and then say no risks anymore in my life. How did they put that in words? I mean, you didn't show any citations, but that would be interesting.
In example for G, she talks about the burnout. When she will starting up her own business, then she will become a burnout. It would be too much for her. I think here are not central the risks. The risks central is that they haven't the social security system behind them. So wenn sie wissen würden, dass auf staatlicher Ebene alle Gründer sozial abgesichert wären, wie das ja im normalen Arbeitsleben auch so ist, dann wären diese Probleme nicht da. Also,
yes. So,
es ist nicht der Umgang mit Risiken, sondern die soziale Absicherung.
Isn't this the coin flipped?
Ja, ich finde schon, es ist was anderes tatsächlich.
Okay. Further questions? No further questions, then thanks again.